today's top boxing news. Ow!
I've seen tweets, I don't know if it's official, but there's been tweets about linking you with a fight with Terry Harper. I know there's talks on going with Jonas. So you tell us what's going on.
I can't tell you guys anything. My team has, all the offers, and we're dealing with them at the moment. Hopefully by the end of this week, you guys will have an announcement from me about who I'm fighting next. But, I'm down for any fight. You know me, I'll fight anybody anywhere. So hopefully by the end of the week, you'll have an answer.
And your record proves that, like you fought both of these women. So I understand from what you're saying, Terry Harper talks are actually, because no one's actually confirmed it, but the talks are Terry's in the hat as well.
I can't confirm anything at the moment, so my team obviously has all the information, and like I said, you guys will find out by the end of the week.
We've known for some time now that Terry Harper has entered the running for a potential Rankin fight, and it was reported that Hannah was actually offered more money to take on Terry than she was set to make unifying with Natasha. Rankin is not a fighter that you can accuse of shying away from tough fights and tough challenges. She fought both Claressa Shields and Savannah Marshall, for God's sake. I don't think she's afraid of Natasha Jonas, or Terry Harper for that matter, if she decides to fight Natasha, or if it happens the other way, if it happens in reverse.
She ends up fighting Terry instead of Natasha. I don't imagine Natasha would be happy about it.
But at the same time, it can't be categorized as an according to Hoyle duck, as Rankin, I reiterate, has never shied away from a tough fight, tough challenges. She's fought two naturally bigger girls than both Natasha Jonas and Terry Harper. Now, I think here, what's most rudimentary, what will likely be the deciding factor, is the money. If they offered her more money to take on Terry than she was set to make for taking on Natasha,
it has its role to play.
Earlier today, they held the press conference for the Savannah Marshall versus Claressa Shields fight. Alicia Baumgartner versus Michaela Mayer, as you all know, will be the co-main event. And I have the sneaking suspicion that what they want to do is lock down Rankin versus Jonas as a unification match for this card.
But if no other undercard information has been made available at this time, it's because the fight's not done yet.
I get the sense that what they're trying to do is put together an all-female card with many familiar faces, familiar fighters, champions, Natasha Jonas and Hannah Rankin being two among them. I get the sense that they wish to decorate the Shields versus Marshall undercard with Natasha Jonas versus Hannah Rankin. I don't know if that's how the cookie's going to crumble. I don't know what decision Hannah Rankin will decide to make, though I get the impression that that's what Adam Smith, Ben Shalom, and the people at Boxer, I get the sense that's what they want to do.
This is a historic card.
I don't actually know if this is going to be on the same scale, same size as Taylor versus Serrano. I get the distinct impression that this card won't get the exact same reception that card did, that fight did. But it will be a big card, an important one, and perhaps that might persuade Hannah Rankin to take on Natasha Jonas as opposed to Terry Harper on the matchroom side of things.
Maybe it's because I've already seen Natasha Jonas at the weight.
At least once against the very seasoned Chris Namis, that I feel Natasha's a little bit more cut out to campaign at this weight than Terry Harper is. Natasha Jonas, she has a very solid base. Big quads, which is where the power gets generated after all. Power is generated from the ground up. And that's not saying that Terry Harper doesn't have a solid base as well. She does. She's got big quads and big hams as well.
But are they miscalculating? Are they biting off more than they can chew here?
Some of the same virtues are in play. That should Terry Harper move all the way up there from 135 pounds up to junior middleweight, she will have a natural speed advantage over most other junior middleweights because she is a naturally smaller fighter. Her punch will carry because she has a solid base, big quads and big hams coupled with the speed.
Yeah, I think she'll have pop up there.
But what about durability, punch resistance? Terry Harper, not but 2 fights ago, was stopped, was knocked out. And you can attribute that to perhaps Terry staying at 130 pounds too long, though Hannah Rankin, she put the last girl she fought in the hospital.
Hannah's naturally bigger. She's going to be naturally stronger, naturally more durable.
I've been seeing images of Terry Harper in camp, sparring the very statuesque Cindy Ryan. Cindy, who's got a lot of size for a 140-pound fighter. Hannah Rankin has fought as high as 160. I'll tell you what I think. I don't know if Terry Harper's going to get this fight, though it's clear that she wants it. But you will notice that Shields versus Marshall, which was rumored to be a pay-per-view, it's not a pay-per-view. Sky Sports decided to pony up the scratch, pony up the cash, in order to satisfy everybody's wants and everybody's needs without the fight being a pay-per-view. And I get the sense that they might do the exact same thing when it comes to Rankin and Natasha Jonas. If Hannah was offered more money by Matchroom to take on Terry, perhaps they might match Matchroom's offer to ensure they get Rankin as opposed to Matchroom.
That might be the way the cookie crumbles.
So while many of you out there might be wondering as to whether or not this is a miscalculation for Team Harper, it may not even matter. Hannah may so decide to take on Natasha on the Sky Sports Boxer side of things so she can be featured on this card, which is a big card.
Let's wait and see.
In other news, per tweet from Chris Mannix, Jake Paul is finalizing a deal to face Rahman Jr. on August 6th. Sources familiar with the negotiations told Sports Illustrated. Now, Rahman is the son of ex-heavyweight champion Rahman. Jake Paul is pivoting away from Tommy Fury, who was denied entry into the United States last week. Jake Paul, he gave Tommy Fury a deadline.
There are really two stories here.
The more obvious story is that Jake is going to be fighting someone else. That much we can see. But what's not so obvious is what effect does this have on Tommy Fury, the would-be boxer, and his would-be boxing career? That so far...
In this story, he was the one who was intended to be the consummate professional.
Update. We've spoken to Tommy Fury's lawyers. They are all advising him to just go to the embassy to get his visa. That's all he has to do. But Tommy is showing no urgency. He hasn't gone yet. He's not communicating with us on what he's doing. Is this another case of Tommy fumbles, just being scared to fight me? I think that's what it is. I think the Fury family is trying to manipulate something here to make me fight in the UK. Okay, you want me to fight in the UK? Show me $15 million. Okay, because here in America, we do more pay-per-view buys, we do more ticket sales, and we do more sponsorship. I've shown you the money. We're ready to go. MSG, August 6th. Tommy, you're going to miss out on the biggest payday of your life? Because you want me to come to the UK? Like I said, I'll come there. Just show me the money. But y'all can't do that. Y'all don't have $15 million. This is embarrassing. Go to the embassy, get your visa, and let's make this fight happen. Stop ducking me and stop wasting my time.
Jake Paul issued out that video message to Tommy Fury, urging him to sort out his situation approximately 6 days ago, and 6 days later, it seems Tommy fumbles.
Hasn't been able to sort it out.
Jake Paul gave Tommy Fury a deadline to manage this situation, get the wheels in motion. He stated Tommy Fury is officially out by Wednesday morning. If he doesn't go to the embassy, come out of hiding, 3 other opponents lined up. I'm built different.
So we can all see how we got here.
I have to say that all of this has been a public relations nightmare for Tommy Fury. Whatever legitimacy he had as a boxer, and whatever credibility he had, if any, it's all but gone now.
When this fight first became a talking point, Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury, didn't think this is how it would shake out.
Boxing is the theater of the unexpected. Jake Paul is reportedly now in talks to face Rahman as a replacement for Tommy Fury on August 6th. Rahman is 12-1 as a professional and the son of former heavyweight champion Rahman. It's claimed they are in the process of finalizing a deal.
The fight's already registered on BoxRec.
Rahman was already in action earlier this year in April against Tommy Morrison's boy, James Mackenzie Morrison, who stopped Rahman Jr. in 5 rounds, 5th round TKO stoppage. This is the ideal situation for Rahman Jr. to get himself back in the winner's bracket, have a rebound fight with a guy who really isn't at the same level that he is in terms of experience. Rahman Jr. does have more professional bouts, after all, than Jake Paul, and none of those guys that Rahman Jr. fought are YouTubers or basketball players, mixed martial artists crossing over into boxing. Mark Ortega tweeted, Rahman Jr. had about 100 amateur fights before turning pro in 2017. He lost by knockout in his first step-up. In his most recent fight, his 13th pro fight. But this marks the first opponent for Jake Paul where boxing is their main focus. I don't hate this fight at all, and I have to agree that
even though Rahman Jr. is coming off a loss, this seems like a more ambitious fight than the Tommy Fury fight.
Rahman Jr. has more professional bouts than either Tommy Fury or Jake Paul. He's got more of an amateur background than Tommy Fury does.
Obviously more than Jake.
Sporting a professional record of 12 wins with 1 loss, 6 knockouts, 31 years old, standing in at about 6'3". He's got some size on Jake, a little bit, an inch or two, give or take.
This is ambitious from Jake.
He really doesn't have to fight this guy, you understand. They could have just as easily continued to search for some other social media influencer, like Jake, someone who's got a following the same way he's got a following. He's choosing to fight a more experienced fighter than Tommy Fury. And you have to respect that, even if it can backfire.
He's showing that he's serious about his boxing. He's serious.
He better be if he's going to be fighting Hasim Rahman Jr., Hasim Rahman's kid. This is a family business to them.
This isn't something that Hasim Rahman Jr. is experimenting with in all the ways that Jake Paul has been experimenting with boxing the last 2 or 3 years.
Time has proven that Jake Paul's interest in being taken seriously as a boxer, his interest in his endeavor into the sport, is a serious interest and a serious endeavor, and it's Tommy Fury, the would-be consummate professional.
It's Tommy who's the poser. It's Tommy who's the wannabe.
Theater of the unexpected, right?
Right.
Finally, in men's super middleweight news, Canelo Alvarez on the animosity towards Gennady Golovkin. He said I was dishonest. He said I was a cheater, referencing Canelo Alvarez's clenbuterol scandal in between their first fight and their second fight. I said it then and I'll say it here again. That's something that's not going to go away.
It's a stain on his legacy that won't wash off.
The typically mild-mannered Gennady Golovkin never bought that story and reacted with an uncharacteristic rancor at the time. Their second fight eventually took place in the fall, with Alvarez winning a close majority decision. Come on, I told you. It's not me, Golovkin told reporters in March of 2018. Canelo's team are using these drugs, and everybody's trying to pretend it's not happening.
Yeah, everybody, including you, Triple G, because you chose to fight the guy anyway.
It's not that Triple G doesn't raise a valid point. It's that in spite of the valid point that he raised way back when in 2018, he still chose to go ahead with the fight. So when you make your bed, you lie in it.
You knew what was going on, but you chose to fight him anyway.
This guy, he knows. This is not his first day in boxing. He proves he gets benefits from everyone, and he can get away with it. The commentators, commission, doping commission. This is a very bad business. It's not sport. Check him on a lie detector, and then we can find out everything. In response to the clenbuterol scandal, a hair follicle test was conducted in order to exonerate Canelo of culpability. And what doesn't often get said is that a hair follicle test is not a good indicator for that particular drug, clenbuterol, least of all in light-colored hair. We talked about that here on the channel. He said I was dishonest, that I was a farce, that I was a cheater, Alvarez explained. He mentioned that my entire team was ashamed for my country. So those are some of the things that he mentioned. Alvarez also blasted Golovkin for failing to repeat those claims to his face in the most recent media rounds. He talks a lot of things behind you. Then when you show up in front of the cameras, he doesn't say what he said before, Alvarez said. That's why I don't like him. He talks a lot of things about me in the past. He says, I don't say anything, but I know what he said. That's why I don't like him. He's one of the best. He's one of the best for sure.
They conducted that hair follicle test in order to exonerate Canelo of culpability.
But to a lot of people, it wasn't convincing because hair follicle testing in this kind of a scenario, it's unconventional because it's unreliable. So it didn't sway some of Canelo Alvarez's critics. A lot of people, they still viewed him as a cheater, still view him as a cheater, Gennady Golovkin among them.
Hey, but you still chose to walk in there and you still chose to fight him for a second time.
You didn't have to fight him for a second time. You chose to do it because of the financial incentive. So let's just call a spade a spade.
It was a big fight then. It's still a big fight now.
The demand for Canelo versus Golovkin 3 has remained, says DAZN executive.
It was a big fight then. It's still a big fight now.
The intrigue from the public has remained 100%. Markowski told BoxingScene.com on Monday afternoon at a news conference in Manhattan to announce Canelo versus Golovkin 3. You can use any metric you want to look at. From a social media perspective, from a media perspective, we study the chatter of boxing fans. Markowski noted, however, that the demand for a trilogy certainly was helped by the fact that Alvarez lost to Dmitry Bivol by unanimous decision in their light heavyweight title bout in May. Conversely, Markowski believes Golovkin's late-round beatdown of Ryota Murata earlier this year to unify the WBA and IBF titles also helped renew interest in the trilogy. I think the intrigue is probably different to what it was 2 or 3 years ago, Markowski said. If you had to ask me 6 3 months ago, if boxing fans cared about this fight as much as they did 3 years ago, the answer is probably not. I think a lot of boxing people, having watched Canelo versus Bivol, think Canelo is beatable. And having watched Gennady's last fight, put him back into place where he can beat Canelo. Even people who criticize the fight, of which there are some, they're still going to watch it because it is a fight that draws intrigue like few others, and he's not wrong.
Remember after Amir Khan versus Kell Brook first got made?
Wasn't that long ago. You heard a lot of people complaining that the fight was past the sell-by date, that they waited too long to do it, and I maintain my position. The night of the fight, people are going to watch that fight. People are going to want to tune in regardless of what they're saying now. That fight will do well at the box office, it'll do well at the gate, and that's exactly what it did. The same applies here.
Yeah, people are going to poo-poo all over the fight right now, but when the numbers are in, you'll see.
Markowski said the Bivol loss helped Alvarez to agree to face Golovkin. Alvarez, Markowski pointed out, still wants to avenge his loss to Bivol. We didn't have those conversations about fighting Golovkin until after the Bivol fight, and I think Canelo probably is more open to it now than pre-Bivol, Markowski said. He clearly wants to move back up to 175 pounds and beat Bivol and right that wrong from his perspective. Before that, he's got business to take care of here. He's got to make a statement, and I believe he wants to.
He wants to do to Gennady Golovkin in their third fight what he couldn't do to Dmitry Bivol in their last fight.
And regardless of what barbs are being traded and what hard feelings remain, Gennady is not the same fighter that he used to be. He's not the same fighter that Canelo Alvarez fought over 4 years ago in 2018. He's just not that guy anymore.
They say that power is the last thing to go.
But a fighter's legs and his speed, his reflexes, those are some of the first things to go. And Gennady Golovkin, what's he, 40 years old?
Canelo Alvarez was already the slightly faster fighter 4 years ago. What do you think he is now, 4 years later?
Because Canelo's coming off a loss. Because there are questions hovering over his head, and because Canelo himself wants to make a statement, get himself back in the winner's bracket, and close this chapter of his career with Gennady.
Oh yeah, people are going to buy this fight.
Even if interest in the fight isn't exactly what it was 4 years ago, it's still bigger than anything else anyone else is doing.